Welcome to In the Now with Jim Swilley. We're in a series with our friend Zach, and it's called Energy Coherence. This will be part 7. If you have not seen the previous ones, take some time. You know, this is the age of binge watching. People binge watch Netflix and they get caught up on everything. If you did it with Game of Thrones, now do it with In the Now with Jim Swilley, and take some time off. Get a healthy snack. You don't need to be eating garbage listening to this stuff. You'll have a disconnect. So eat something
If
healthy.
not dysentery. I don't know.
Zach, I do all the comedy. Yeah. Stick to what you know. Anyway, this would be a good time to watch all of this in its entirety. So once again, welcome our friend Zach Keough. Zach, we welcome you. I'm assuming the audience is caught up with the previous episode, so let's get started with the next slide. What was it you were about to show us?
So this is this slide here is it's a 2 slides. So this is first of 2. This is a testimony from a gal here who posted this just 2 or 3 days ago. And it was a question that, again, so I'm not a doctor. The question was asked. No, I'm not a doctor. However, I am a student of a university that teaches, I'm pursuing a bachelor's degree in holistic medicine, which is a combination, a hybrid of ancient Eastern and Western medicine, which is also known as Ayurvedic medicine. So within my studies, I kind of venture outside of the purview, if you will, and I try to make the connection. So
and you also have your family is in chiropractic. You have
yes.
some background in medicine.
Absolutely. So I have, so two generations preceding me that are chiropractors. So my grandfather and my father, and both specialize in holistic health. And I also have a cousin on that side of the family also as well that's a chiropractor. So, but anyway, here's a testimony here of a gal within my class who wanted to share her testimony. It really didn't, in a sense, kind of, it was directed toward the question that was asked her. But she went on to kind of share her experiences in this, and it really touches on what we're talking about. Let's start with the second sentence. For me, this is a very personal question. Approximately 4 years ago now, I was diagnosed with severe B-cell rheumatoid arthritis. I was crippled in a wheelchair or walker for 6 months. Nothing was truly working. Prednisone, pain medications, immunotherapy, chemotherapy, Rituxan and methotrexate helped me to walk again, but didn't relieve the pain, and I hated the side effects that came with it. Again, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, treating the symptoms, but not treating the core issue. A friend of mine told me to use the frankincense oil on the roof of my mouth, which helped me with some of the inflammation. My stepdaughter is a nutrition major, and since I was a nurse interested in nutrition, she bought me the book, if you would, next slide, please. Prescription for Nutritional Healing by a person known as P. Balk. Way before I had signed up for this course. I also had been, I was seen at a gastroenterology nurse for many years, so I had read a lot about the leaky gut, which we talked about a lot last week. I started to watch my processed foods, decrease sugar and gluten, eat organic as much as possible, and all the flares started to go away. Proper amino acids, vitamins, and especially minerals are necessary to build a strong body. Also to remove the toxins, that's key. By February of 2018, I was flare-free. With the approval of my primary physician in July, a few months later, I went off all the medications. To date, I've had no flares. My rheumatologist is not pleased and tells me I'm going to be crippled and come crawling back to him, but I feel great. I use this as an example when teaching others all the time. The only major supplement I take along with clean eating is sulfurzyme, which is a MSM product, organic sulfur. That right there pretty much sums up
Interesting.
what we're talking about. And we can go on to the next slide, too. Okay, so what I didn't leave you all with last week was what are some of the solutions, right? So I said, okay, here's a lot of the things that can happen if you eat this kind of processed foods and sorts, right? So, but I told you I wanted to leave you with some solutions to help you get to a point where you can get to the point where your body starts to feel healthy, you think yourself healthy, and you will be healthy. And in the process of being in a healthy state, now you have been made whole, right? So the first of which is quercetin. It's a compound that can be found in apples, green tea, kale, onion, really any kind of dark leafy greens. Spinach is also a good one. And then, of course, L-glutamine, which is an amino acid, restores the integrity of the stomach lining the cells. I don't know if I mentioned it last week, but the stomach itself is only one cell in its composition, right? So it's very thin. The lining of it is very thin. However, the interior of the stomach is lined with about 10 to 12 layers of good and bad bacteria, hopefully most of which is comprised of good bacteria, right? Let's see. Okay, deficiency in L-glutamine could result in deterioration of intestinal tissue. Nearly a third of L-glutamine is used in the intestinal tract. Potential cause for intestinal permeability, which we talked about last week, known as leaky gut. Foods rich in L-glutamine are spinach, dark leafy greens, fish, beets, and peas. There's a lot more. This is not all-inclusive list, by the way. So that's why I give you enough information to kind of pique your interest and you to kind of do the study on your own.
And I'm sure you all know this, but whatever is good in a vegetable, the darker the vegetable, the better. Like kale is darkest green, spinach is dark green, much healthier for you than just lettuce. Or even cabbage for that matter. Like dark beans, black beans, kidney beans, like they're better for you than the light colored beans.
So those type of foods are rich in what the scientists are now referring to as microRNA. And again, it's that compound that speaks or transmits the information, the epigenetic instructions to the body to say, hey, I need for you to start doing this and thwarting off all of these free radicals and toxins within the body. So microRNA, and then your phytonutrients. A lot of these foods are good and rich in phytonutrients. The problem with the food that we eat today is that these foods that we eat today, consume today, are not as rich in phytonutrients as the foods we ate, let's say, about 60, 70 years ago, because they're processed, right? So if you go to the store today and you buy some produce off the shelf, right, and you see that little sticker there with a 4-digit number, anybody know what that represents? Usually what you'll pick up is a sticker that starts with the letter 4. That means that particular piece of produce has been processed. If it starts with a number 9, it means it is organic. Seriously, you can research that. So kind of puts a different spin on, okay, well, what am I feeding my body here, right? You got something?
Well, I was going to say even it's synchronistic because as you're saying this, I'm getting text from Christina saying, "Could you please pick up organic apples when you go?" I was just interested. As you were saying that, I'm not looking at the time. I'm reading text.
Yeah.
But I was even going to say, I didn't know that about processed food. But even like I love Chinese food, Japanese food, which are very rice friendly. But even when you eat white rice, all of the germ is taken out of it. So at least, and you can request most places. There's even black rice, and it's good. It's very. To me it tastes better. But wild rice, brown rice, whatever. Even if I order Chinese food, which probably is somewhat processed, but at least you do what you can. And I ask for brown rice instead of white rice. So every little bit helps. The darker your food is, the better it is for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would just, again, foods that start with that sticker, that 4-digit number, start with letter 4, are infused with or have been treated with pesticides or some other kind of chemical process. And again, as I explained last week, it's done with good intent, right? Where the intent was to produce more food. And, oh, by the way, if you look at the size of the foods, right, for something that's been processed versus something that's organic, look at the difference in the size. The difference in the size is enormous, almost up to 50% bigger in size what you get for something that's been processed versus something that's been, something that's organic. So those are some things to think about. But I want to drive this conversation so that we can also deal with the other side of this, which is perceiving the imperceptible. Remember last week we talked about that. And again, it goes back to Dr. Violdo's statement, is love is obviously that the vehicle that allows us to tap into that other realm, right, which is our spirituality. You may say, okay, well, if I'm eating healthy for my body's sake, that's great. Now you're telling me I need to do it for my spirit's sake. Listen, there's a lot of us that are still kind of mentally distracted, right? Some of us, probably all of us, are looking for some closure in our lives somewhere. And because we haven't gotten that closure, it's still creating, in the back of our mind, still creating a lot of stress. And last week, remember, we talked about, we said energy doesn't die, right? So when loved ones go on, they're still just, we feel like maybe sometimes we haven't got the closure that we want to with those people, those loved ones that have gone on. So I think, and this is last week I wanted to share this, and I'm going to share this morning. When we're referring to Jesus post-crucifixion and to the resurrection piece, when he appeared the first time to his disciples, remember, this was so fresh because it had occurred just 3 days earlier, right? I mean, it was such an emotional event that when they had all congregated, Jesus appeared before him, or before them when they all had congregated. And so because the emotion was still high, because it was still fresh in their memory, I think because of that, their collectiveness together, I really I attribute this to their state of oneness with each other, is what brought Jesus back within their presence. Now, whether or not you want to make the argument that Jesus actually returned back in the flesh or not, that's totally up to you. I think he did. And I think that's how strong that force among those people were. I don't think he would have presented himself into any one individual separately at that point. Maybe he would have. I don't know. The Bible doesn't, it doesn't make or communicate such instances.
Same thing with the day of Pentecost, the fact that it took 10 days for them to all become one mind and one accord, and then there's the manifestation of Spirit.
Absolutely. Mind you, there were multiple, in the book of John, there were multiple instances thereafter in which he appeared to his disciples. And for every subsequent event, his presence became more latent. In other words, by the time we get to the final instance in the book of John, they couldn't even recognize the guy they were walking with for about 7 miles because, again, they were so removed in time that their emotional attachment to it wasn't as strong as it was 3 days after he had passed or after he had died, right? So now fast forward several weeks later, maybe even a few months later, and they recognized him, but it wasn't immediately. It wasn't even after they broke company, immediately after they broke company with the guy that they realized it. They had gone on and done something else later in the day among conferring. It wasn't until they started conferring with one another that they realized, again, they were drawing that energy from one another, and they realized, oh, man, that was him. But I don't think it was in the physical sense. I think they just recognized the spiritual sense. Remember last week we talked about when somebody goes and passes on to the next realm, or they shed themselves of this physical body, the energy doesn't die. In fact, it's subsumed by another person.
Agreed.
Right? So in this instance, they didn't even recognize it immediately. But after they had broke, they conferred with one another, the energy was there, and they said, oh my gosh, it is at this point now that I think we recognize who that was. Right? And I'm here to tell you today, and again, I think they were looking for closures. I couldn't imagine what some of the disciples were thinking. Well, if you would have just done this, then maybe this wouldn't have happened, or whatever the case may be. But I think all of us, I know for sure, all of us look for closure somewhere along the line. And I think it's because of those who have gone on and passed and went on without us, if you will. I think because, again, it goes back to being healthy. If I'm healthy here, I have a greater sense of receptivity here in my heart, right? And I can tap into that other dimension, and I can begin to communicate. If you remember last week, we talked about, again, here I go with my Beatles song, Julia. John Lennon, who wrote the song about his mother, Julia, right? And he says, half the words that I say are meaningless, but I say them just to reach you, Julia. Sometimes it's by the words that we communicate that we can begin to connect with people who have gone on. Right? But sometimes that connection appears latent because we're not as receptive. Why? Because maybe it has something to do with our diet, our internal organs.
Well, the same thing's true when you're talking about Jesus. That's a great observation. But even the whole fasting piece, it's the whole thing about fasting was not to get God to act. It was to make the person more sensitive to the spirit realm. Whatever God is, God is God. We're the ones that change things here on the earth. And our perception of things is, what you see is what, he says to Joshua, what do you see? If Joshua doesn't see that he can take the city, he doesn't take the city. So it's not a matter of me praying, trying to get a deity somewhere to move in my behalf. It's me removing the blockages to perception so that I can see what is already here. It's like Elisha saying that those that are with us are more than them. That was already a reality. And diet, there's even a Elizabethan word called surfeiting, and it means like, you know, eating so much to where your senses are dull, and that's when you become you spiritually self-sabotage. Anyway, this is amazing stuff. Do you have anything else we're going to show, or are we?
I would just to add one more thing to this. So if we're not feeling the way that we should because of the foods that we're eating and the state of the body, right? If you ever come into conversation with somebody, and maybe you come to them, or you talk to them, call them on the phone and say, hey, let's go out, let's have a day together, whatever the case. Let's just have you and I time. Oh, I can't. I wish I could. I'm just not feeling well. You've missed an opportunity, right? Because it's in those opportunities that you can converse with somebody else and have that connection. You were talking about energies being matched or overlapping with them. We have a morphogenetic field or electromagnetic field that extends beyond 5 feet from us, and we don't even realize it. That's why when we come in close contact or within proximity of people, we have this shared energy about it. It's like, oh man, I love the energy in this room. It's because we're sharing that energy.
By the same token, we need to wrap up, but by the same token, I have noticed that the more in tune I become, the more sensitive I am. Not in it's easy for you to hurt my feelings kind of way. It's just that I'm so sensitive to energy that somebody who's super negative, I got to really watch it because they can affect me more than they used to. Like there was a time I could just blow it off and say, I don't care what you say. Now I feel people's words go into me, and so it makes you. It's like it's like when you're in the physical, when your antibodies are low, whatever. You're very careful what you expose yourself to because you might not have enough. So you got to be careful about that because the more spiritually in tune you become, there's some people you just can't hang out with. You just can't talk to. You can't communicate with because it's happened to me 2 or 3 times in the last few months where I could feel when somebody said something to me, they didn't even realize it. I felt it manifest in my body. I felt their words come in and literally make me sick. And I think I got to be careful how I, and not everybody can understand that if you say, I'm too sensitive to talk to you, that's going to make you sound like a jerk. I would not suggest you do that, but you have to learn where your boundaries are. And you're right. There are people that can heal you. There are also people that can make you ill. So you've got to be careful, how you do that. Anyway, go ahead. Make your closing arguments, if you would, please.
Yeah, so again, I leave you with eat green, eat clean, and in doing so, you will stay receptive. You will stay attuned to an environment that is what we refer to as the non-local source or the non-local mind or the universe in which we refer to it. And that's really the state that we all want to be in. That is ultimately spirituality as we would define it, right? And that's where we want to be. And I would tell you, and again, in connecting with those that have gone on, they're stripped of their bodies. So everything that they were once regimented with, right, if they were just because we're generational in nature, right? We're sclerotic beings, so there's certain things that we like to cling to that the younger generation says, no, I disagree with that. That's fine. But now when that's all stripped away and I have nothing but pure energy in front of me, those energies now begin to speak to me, right? Now I can tap into a source that is way beyond my level of intellect and knowledge. And that's really what we're trying to get at. Hope that makes sense.
Oh, totally. Zach, I can't thank you enough. This has been amazing, and we honor your gift, and thank you for your service to our country, and as you go for your deployment. As you go for your deployment, we speak a very successful year over you, and that everything's well with your family that remains here in the States. You're blessed when you come in and when you go out. And for this next chapter of your life, when you go, you have a lot to give. And so we honor your gift and we embrace it and believe that the best is yet to come. You're a blessing, a Renaissance man, a soldier, a doctor. It's just, and he's already taken ladies, so what are you going to do? I know some of you are like, what's his number? He's taken. Can't have him. Look, but don't touch. I also speak a blessing over your food, over your eating habits. This stuff is not difficult. Even if this is new information for you, embrace it. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you have to pace yourself with new information. Like, all right, there's so much I can handle at a time, but you can handle this. You can change your lifestyle. You can change your energy. You can. I love the title of that book. You can grow a new body. I just love the concept of that. The idea that, well, your cells are renewing constantly, so why not? You know, why not? Let's explore that and take it as far as we can. So I'm sure there'll be a lot to go back in these all of these episodes, all 7 of them, and glean a lot from it. And I just say that whatever you've imparted to us comes back to you 100-fold. Again, tell Zach how much we appreciate him.